Well, James, you're up to bat.
All right.
Who's James?
Anyway, it's pretty hard to follow anything that Ahmed Bey says. I want to just add one thing to that. Mentioned my being an engineer, and I'm guilty. And so, when God is love, in engineering, that includes everything and everyone and all the time. So, if you look at in sort of a physical way, what love might be in a physical way, if God is love, then there is nothing that is not love. Absolutely nothing is not love. Every grain of sand, every thought, everything is love. Where we come into the concept of things that aren't love is where we get into our ego. And when we get into our ego, even many of the things that we think are not love can somehow be connected to it, as we understand the is it or isn't it type of thing. And I'll give you one example. I have a little emotional thing that happens to me every time I think about this, but I went through the death camp at Dachau in Germany. It was a few years after everybody died there, but you could still feel it. And it was something that is incomprehensible. But a story that goes along with that is that one of the young ladies that was probably destined to die in that death camp was picked out by one of the Nazi officers to be beaten. And every day she would be called in, or several times a week, to his office, and he would beat her. Physically beat her. She would go back out, they would keep her alive, and a few days later, the next day, maybe she would be called back in. One day when she went in, she looked at the man, and she felt sorry for him. I just can't believe that you have all of that hate in you, and if you have to express it by beating on me, I guess that's okay. But I really feel sorry for you. She didn't express this to the man. She thought it. And guess what? The expression changed on his face. He called in a doctor and had her wounds taken care of and never did it again. That's where love was working. And it's something to keep in mind when things are most horrible. There's a lesson for somebody somewhere that needs to be handled in that way. Thought maybe I'd talk a little bit about love in my life. And back in the 1950s, there was a lady by the name of Neva Dill Hunter, who was a psychic lady, lived down in Texas and Arizona. And she'd come up to my Uncle Roy's every year in Lansing and give readings. and I was one of the subjects of the readings. And so she talked about lifetimes that we had lived in previous times. And she told me that I was wandering, this is 6,000 to 7,000 years ago, wandering across the desert plains over there in the Middle East, and I came on to a flour mill, and I found a young lady there that was very interesting to me, and I stayed and spent my lifetime there, and that happened to be the little lady that I'm living with today. Started many thousands of years ago. And I think that's really interesting. Another time that she didn't talk about, but this was a vision that I had, is I was at an auction for camels over there in the Middle East. And they brought in a camel to be auctioned off. And it had a little girl tied to its leg. And I bought the camel. And again, that's the lady that I am now married to. This is love. It carries on not only in this lifetime, but I want you to know that it carries on in other lifetimes and will carry on in the future. My daughter, Randy's sister, she was a daughter of Nebuchadnezzar. And I was a Jewish slave, but a advisor to Nebuchadnezzar. And at that time, the walls of Jerusalem needed to be rebuilt, and I talked Nebuchadnezzar into allowing me to go back and rebuild those walls. Well, Randy's sister, who was in love with me at the time, stowed away on my wagon going back, and I discovered her a day or so out and decided I'd better take her back because I had a job to do and this didn't fit in. So I did. And in the meantime, after I did my work, going back to try to find her, they had had a little war in the meantime, and she had been run off with a soldier and made his wife. And of course, in this lifetime, she married a soldier, Larry. And so love carries over into other lifetimes, again and again and again, through different experiences that we have. We also have things that happen to us. When I was a little boy, I loved to build airplanes. It was during the Second World War. And I would fly them out of the upper window of our home with firecrackers in them and blow up these beautiful little airplanes. But that would seem to be the thing to do. But what was interesting was later on, after I had become a pilot myself and had a couple of experiences of airplanes quitting on me and what have you, I discovered that I had been a pilot in the First World War. One of the people who I killed in the First World War happened to be in this lifetime the mechanic that was working on my airplanes that quit on me while I was flying them. And fortunately, I didn't need to die to make the compensation. I also had passengers, and each time that I had problems with the airplanes stopping, it's quite a feeling when you're up there and that feller stops, believe me. But I figure that the people that were my passengers and that I got the airplanes on the ground and nobody got hurt were people that I probably also killed in the First World War or at some time in my existence. And I compensated it for that by saving their life in this incarnation. There's a lot of things that go on that we just don't understand and that we look at and we put labels on it, good and bad and all of these things, but they're all lessons. And they're all love lessons. And I'm really very happy to still be here and to talk about these kind of things because there is nothing but love and nothing but lessons that we have to learn. And whenever anything comes up that's negative, we think negative thoughts, the thing we want to do is to not look at what the past has been, but look at it and say, how can I make a loving outcome to what's going on? What's happening? What can I do that the result of that, because right now I have the power to do it. The situation is in front of me. And the same thing with you folks. When something happens that looks like, oh boy, this ain't no good. If you look at it and say, but that's in the past. What can I do? What can I put in place that's going to have a loving outcome? And that's where I think we need to change a little of our thinking. It's not a woe is me, it's what can I do? And we have our love starts in the heart. It's by feelings. So what good feelings are you going to have when you put something in place? Are you going to have good feelings as the outcome that you're looking for? If it happens, are you going to have good feelings about it? Look at the feelings. Your ego, which resides in your brain, is always going to be trying to justify something. And I want you to keep that in mind, because love doesn't have to be justified, it is. And if that's what you're creating and that's what you're looking for, that's what you'll get. So, this would be sort of like I wrote this down. I'll just read it to you. It's about the ego more than anything else. It's what you don't want. Maybe a little bit down at the bottom it says something, how to take a look at things differently. Have you ever noticed when you have a problem, you blame somebody for it, that it never corrects or solves whatever the situation or condition is? Blame perpetuates and never corrects or solves anything. Blame until you forgive And focus your thinking prevents believing it in the past. Therefore, to make life better, more happy, more fruitful, and more fulfilling, you must decide what you want and where and how to get it. Refocus your thinking, energy, and resources to put what you desire into being. Leave the blame behind and erase it from your mind, and always make your decisions based on love, being the result and being the outcome. Thank you.